How's it going, guys? Welcome back to our channel. I'm Julian.
And I'm Tara Connor.
Today we're here at Paramount Studios, Facing Addiction in America. We got all checked in, got our badges.
Boop, boop.
Tara, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're doing here today and why it's a big deal?
Today's a really big deal. The Surgeon General is making the first ever announcement on drugs, alcohol, and health. This nation really needs to start looking at addiction and alcoholism as a healthcare issue and not a moral failing, and today is a great step forward for the recovery movement.
Cool, awesome. Well, like I said, we're happy to be here. We got all checked in. We're going to have some footage of the Surgeon General announcement and hopefully some of the interviews and stuff like that. So we'll
apparently I'm speaking too.
You are speaking.
That's
exciting. So we'll check in with you guys in a little bit after all this goes down, and yep, see you soon.
With 1 in every 3 households impacted by addiction, it is clear everybody knows somebody whose life has been turned upside down or worse. I so deeply hope today that today marks the day when all of us can begin facing addiction in America. Thank you.
My name is Tara Connor. I am a person in long-term recovery, and for me, why do I always mess that up? For me, that means that I haven't had a need to take a drink or a drug since December 11th of 2006, and I'm getting ready to come up on 10 years. Most people came to know me when I was Miss USA in 2006, and even more people got to know me when I tested positive for cocaine. What people didn't know was that I had wow, I just got back from Ireland last night. This is a little disclaimer, the brain's not fully working. But I'm here, show up no matter what. Thank you, I'll take it, yeah. But I was silently suffering from a nasty addiction from the age of 14. My life was a perfect storm for addiction to manifest. I was sexually abused by a family member when I was 3 years old. My family had alcoholism and mental illness running in it, rampant. My idea was that maybe one of these days, if I can make the outside look great, then maybe one of these days the inside will catch up, because I remember feeling unmanageable within my body before I ever put a drink or a drug inside of my body. And my perfect storm led to a manifestation of an allergy that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. The good news is that I can treat that allergy today, and I can treat that unmanageability, and I can treat my sick spirit. And that's all a result of being a person in long-term recovery. Now, when I went through my bottom, it was very public. A lot of people had a lot to say. Some of my favorites were Mess USA. I used that for my screen name for Call of Duty, if there are any gamers in here. And they sometimes still call me Disgraced Miss USA. And I very much faced the stigma head on. I remember getting out of treatment and having to do a media tour, which is totally normal. And I had someone ask me, do you think that you tarnished the crown? And I just remember watching that 14-year-old version of myself who was silently suffering, saying to herself, I just got a muzzle put on my mouth because I don't want to be that girl. And so I made it an ambition of mine and a responsibility to teach people about the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that I had finally found. For the first time in my life, I'd finally found the solution to what was wrong with me. And because I had found the answer and I found the problem, I could work on the solution. And I launched into my recovery with wings. I was so grateful just to know that there was a solution. And so for the last forever, almost 10 years now, I've been airing my dirty laundry across the United States, telling my story to whoever will listen to it, because recovery works, and I want people to know that there is a way out, and that this disease does not discriminate, and that even Miss USA can have an addiction, right? But you know what? Miss USA can also be in long-term recovery, and I want to thank everyone who has supported me throughout my journey, and I want to thank the people that didn't support me through my journey, because it ignited a flame inside of my body that said, you know what, people out there need help, and if I can get better, then they can too. So I'm so grateful to be here on this historic day. And, you know, our president-elect was the one that ended up sending me to treatment, oddly enough. And so for me, I'm just very curious to see what our president-elect would be willing to do with me or with other organizations for recovery and addiction services. So I'm excited about this call to action. I will butt heads with whoever I have to, because we all have an opportunity to find that way out, and I want to make sure as many people can get it. Thank you.
That millions of people who need treatment cannot get it, and that we must change that too. And as I stood there, I promised you that in 2016, that we would issue the first ever Surgeon General's report on drugs, alcohol, and health. And I am here today to deliver on that promise. And this has been a long time in coming, but this is an important day. And for me, this day is a personal day too. Because I come at this not just from an intellectual standpoint, but I come at this from a place of emotion and feeling that has been informed by my experiences as a doctor, caring for many patients over the years who have lived with substance use disorders, who have struggled with addiction. I saw so clearly in my practice of medicine that addiction doesn't just affect an individual, it affects their family and their friends. And I remember vividly the faces of the mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters, the sons and daughters, who looked anguished and guilty as they told me the toll that their suffering was taking on their family members. They wanted to overcome their addiction, but they didn't know how. And that's why I am so glad to release this report today, because it turns out there are many sources of hope. In this report, we call the country's attention to the fact that substance use disorders are, in fact, one of our most underappreciated and underaddressed public health crises. We have 20.8 million people in America with a substance use disorder, which is similar to the number of people who have diabetes, and is 1.5 times the number of people who have all cancers combined. But only 1 in 10 people with substance use disorders actually gets treatment. And I want you to imagine how our country would react if only 1 in 10 people with cancer could actually get treatment. If only 1 in 10 people with diabetes could access treatment. We wouldn't tolerate that. And we shouldn't tolerate it for substance use either. The other point, though, that we make in this report is that there are reasons to hope. And those reasons of hope come from science, which tells us that prevention and treatment strategies do in fact work. We have strategies that can reduce the risk of overdose, can reduce the risk of relapse, and can help people live fulfilling and productive lives. And in this report, I call on our country to ensure that everyone who needs access to treatment has it, and to make sure that we are embedding prevention programs in all of our communities so that we can protect our kids in particular. We know that adolescents are particularly at risk for developing substance use disorders. Their brains are still developing. And if you begin using alcohol at or before the age of 15, your risk of developing an alcohol use disorder is 4 times greater than if you start at the age of 21 or later. There is also a marked risk of developing addiction to illicit substances when you start during adolescence as well. So we have to focus our prevention efforts particularly on our kids. But perhaps the most important and difficult thing we call for in this report is a cultural shift in how we think about addiction. For far too long, people have seen addiction as a disease of choice, as evidence of a character flaw, and at worst even as a moral failing. But that is absolutely not the case. Science tells us clearly that addiction is a disease of the brain. It affects the circuitry in our brain and impacts the areas that control decision-making, impulse control, and our stress and reward system. When we understand that, we understand the biological basis for why relapse is so common and why it is so hard to resist the cravings and to deal with the withdrawal symptoms of addiction. We have a major challenge ahead of us. But I have never been more confident that we can overcome it than I have been today and in the days preceding today, as I have met community members and advocates and families who have come together to help us turn the tide on the addiction crisis in America. And we can't do this alone. But really, the truth is that we are here because of something much bigger than this report. We're here because of the sacrifices that so many of you have made. I know that standing up and telling your story is not easy, especially when you know that you may subject yourself to the cruel judgment of others. But despite that risk, men and women all across our country who have a substance use disorder have stood up to shine a light on this problem and to tell our country that we can no longer ignore the suffering of millions and millions of Americans. And that courage is what has allowed us to come to where we are today. You know, we are here to talk about addiction, but the truth is this is about more than addiction. This is about the kind of country that we want to create for ourselves and for our children. A country where people can live with dignity and respect, regardless of their life experience and background. A country where people who need help can get it. That's the kind of country that I want for us and for our future generations. We started on a journey today. But this journey will not be complete until we ensure that everyone who has a substance use disorder can come forward and does not have to live in shame. Our journey doesn't end until everyone who needs treatment can actually get it. Our journey doesn't end until we ensure that as a country, we are coming together to value each and every life. And our journey doesn't end until hope replaces despair, until love ultimately overcomes fear. That's the journey that we're on. And I want to tell you that as your Surgeon General, as a fellow citizen of America, as a resident of this planet, I could not be more proud to stand with you, shoulder to shoulder, on every step of this journey. So thank you all so much for everything you have done.
So we just heard from the Surgeon General, and it was pretty amazing.
It was great. Yeah, it was great. I mean, so much, not only information, but I'm kind of left here with a little bit of hope that, you know, the country is going to start pressing this issue, which it should have been doing almost 100 years ago, right? So, I mean, it's really, really great. You did an awesome job, by the way. Tara killed it on her speech, and yeah, it was really cool. Really glad to be a part of all of it.
Thanks, man. Well, it's going to take all of us, guys, so I encourage you to go out there and do what you can to recover out loud and give the hope to the hopeless and light to the dark. Thanks, guys.